Hello and welcome to everybody on Cloud Fitness. So in today's video, we are going to talk about continuous integration and continuous deployment in Databricks. So in this particular video, essentially, we will be seeing how we can do CI/CD in Databricks. So this was, one of the most important and most asked video, especially in terms of Databricks. For Azure Data Factory, I have already created a CI/CD video. You can go ahead and watch that out, but especially in this particular video, bear with me because this video is definitely going to be a bit longer. Now let's move on to the portal and see what are the basic necessities for it. Now since you're watching this video, I already assume that you know about Databricks. You have been watching my previous videos and you already have a Databricks instance created. So you should have a Databricks instance created and you should be working on it as well, as far as I understand. That's why you're watching this video. And you should also have an Azure DevOps account created. Now in this Azure DevOps account and the Databricks instance, you should always remember that the ID, right, the user through which you have created this Azure DevOps account should be same as your Databricks one. So if you see in the Databricks, I have bhavnabedi15@gmail.com, right? So even if you see over here in Azure DevOps, it's the same. So this has to be same. Now whenever you create this Azure DevOps account, you will actually land into this particular page, and right hand side you can actually see something called as new project, right? You can go ahead, click on this new project and you can get started by creating a new project, right? Let me just name the project as, let's say, 258456. Now if you see, this project, what exactly is this? So this is the place where you will be working in Azure DevOps. You create a project, right? So you are working in a project. This is the place where you are going to store the code of your Databricks. You will have all the features available here for the DevOps. You can create multiple projects as well within the same account, right? This is not a detailed video in Azure DevOps, but I'll just give you an overview. So the moment you create this particular project, on the left hand side, right, you can actually see you have summary, you have dashboards, you have wiki page where you can add some documents, you have boards. So this boards is nothing but in case you are using this you can, like in your organization, if you're using it to create work items, you can link your work items here and you can track your sprints, right? You have a repos section here. Now this repos section is nothing but where your code will reside. So if you have code in Databricks and you want to store it somewhere in Azure DevOps, this is the place where you are going to do it, in the repos sections, right? Similarly, if you want to create pipelines, right, CI/CD pipeline, right, you must have heard this name and we will be creating that. So those pipelines will actually come here. Release pipelines, your integration pipelines, your deployment pipelines will all come here. Similarly, if you have any test plans and artifacts, they actually reside here. At the bottom, you also have something called as project settings, but this is not something that we are going to discuss today. So going back to the repos section, so this is how your initial setup of repos will look like. In case you want to work on it, you have to initialize this repository. So now when I say initialize, you have to just click on this option here. Initialize essentially means, let me just click here. So the moment you initialize it, you can actually see your repository getting created over here, right? Complete blank repository. So if you see, this is the repository, the name of the repository over here, right? This is the project. Essentially this is the same project name that we have created, and inside it you will have multiple branches, right? Main branch, you can add as many branches as you want over here. Now this is a little bit overview on the DevOps part. Now coming on to the Databricks side of it, right? In Databricks, essentially you have two ways in which you can do continuous integration and continuous deployment. One way is essentially your old school way, or you can say it is not used much, right? So we will be discussing both, but I will be showing you demo for one probably. So if you go to the workspace on the left hand side and you go to the users, right? So you might have multiple users over here. So if I go to, you know, any one user over here, right, and if I click on this Colleen notebook or like any notebook, on the left right hand side you can see that there is something called as revision history. So this is one way in which you can do CI/CD, but it is not the preferred one. So if you click on this revision history, right, you can see all the revisions, you know, all the changes that were made to your notebook are actually reflected here. And also on the right hand side you have something called as git not link, and if you click over here, right, and you click on this link option, in fact if you see in this blue box, they have already mentioned that this integration functionality is a legacy feature. So it is usually, you know, it is quite old one. Now if you click on this link you know, option over here, you can paste the URL of your, you know, DevOps, you know, repository. You can select any branch, whatever branch you might be having, and then, you know, in the Git repository, where do you want to store your code and all. So this is how you can link over here. So the moment you link here, what will happen is whenever you are making any changes and you know, just save it, then in that case it will directly go and link to your Azure DevOps over here and store the code, right? But this is not used much. The reason being, if you see over here, I am a user, right? So similarly there might be multiple developers. So if you have multiple developers over here, then what will happen is all the developers will have to link, you know, DevOps to their, you know, local, if I say their local development environment. They have to link it, delink it. If they want to link it to some other branch, they have to first delink it and then relink it, right? And then, you know, it might become really very difficult to work using this particular approach. So that is why this is an obsolete one. So we will be talking more in detail about the second approach and the preferred one. So in the preferred one, you have something called as repos on the right hand on the left hand side, right? Now before moving on to this repo option, let me, you know, talk about little basics. So in this particular Excel, you can actually see what essentially happens is you have a Git server, right? And you have a developer 1, developer 2, developer 3, multiple developers, you know, working in their own local environment. So Git server is the place where you have actually put your latest version of the code. So developer, exactly what he or she will do is he will take the latest code from the Git server, do the development, test it, and then push it back to the Git server, right? So the first part is the developer will try to pull the latest code from the Git server, and then developer will test it or do any kind of development and then do a git push to push it back to the Git server. In between, approvals are you know, always involved. So this is a typical process. Now this is a very easy process in case someone is trying to develop on Python or someone is trying to do it in Java, Python, right? It becomes easier to execute, to pull the code in their own local environment. But in case of Databricks, right, everything is happening on cloud, right? Now in this case, how everything works. In case of Databricks, right, you have something called as repos. Now if I go back here in the repos section, so me, you know, if you see right now I am the owner, I do not have multiple users here, right? But in your organization or in your Databricks instance, you might have multiple users, right? So in the similar way, when you have multiple users, you will see folder names of each and every users over here, right? Now what you can do is you can have a section called as add repo. So the moment you click on it, we will do it. So you can add a repository over here. Now what does this adding a repository mean, right? It essentially means that you are linking your repository, your development space. Now this is your development space, your own folder, right? So inside repo, right, you have a development space. Now in this development space, you can do all your development. How? You will actually link your development space to Azure DevOps. You are going to link your development space to Azure DevOps, pull the latest code from Azure DevOps over here, right? You are going to pull the code, do the development, do the changes, and then you are going to push it back to the Azure DevOps. So this is how the first step is going to take place. Then what essentially will happen? There will be this is the first part, right? And the second part is, you might ask that if push and pull is going to happen on, let's say Databricks notebooks, then essentially if you want to schedule the notebooks, right, if you want to schedule the notebooks, you want to schedule the job, right, there should be some standard notebook, right, where your latest code is present always, and that code is used for your Databricks jobs. Now for that, what will happen is, whenever a developer is developing, he's pulling the code. He's first connecting to the Azure DevOps, he's pulling the code, and he's pulling the latest code. The moment he pulls the latest code, he do the development and push the code back to the Azure DevOps. Now from Azure DevOps, what happens is, a pipeline can run which will actually point to a folder over here in the workspace. You have something called as, you can add any folder. I have just added a folder named as release. You can also add a folder which points to this folder. In this folder of release, the latest code will be present. Now this latest code can actually be used for your scheduling, notebook scheduling, or any kind of work, right? So this is the use case essentially that happens. So the moment what is happening here, the moment a developer pushes the code back to the Azure DevOps, right, it goes to, let's say a branch, right, that goes to the master branch, that goes to the main branch. Then in that case, a deployment pipeline can actually run, which can take the code from Azure DevOps and put it to this particular release folder, right? And this release folder you can use for your scheduling purpose. So this is what we are going to see today. Now here, essentially, if I go back to repos, click on add a repo here, now you can see that there is something called as git repository URL, right? Now what is this git repository URL? If you go back to this Azure DevOps, click on this clone option over here, copy this particular URL and then simply paste it over here, right? And then you can see automatically a Git provider Azure DevOps services is auto selected here. Although there are multiple Git providers, if you are using Bitbucket, GitHub or anything, you can actually use that as well. But for this particular demo session, we are going to use Azure DevOps services. Similarly, repository name is just for your reference. You can keep it as anything and just click on submit. So the moment you click on submit, you will actually see that it says creating repo in the background, and you will actually see that this repo got created, right? So this is how your repository will get created. This is the repo name, and it will also tell you which branch it is linked to. It is linked to the main branch. Now if you click on that, you can actually see that it is linked to the main branch. Now what exactly is this? So it is actually linked to this particular repository and this particular main branch. So if you want to change the branch, you can create a new branch and simply just select it. That's all. That is what you need to do. Now in case you want to pull the latest code from the repository, you can always hit this pull option. You will pull the latest code from the repository. Now let's say that I am a developer, right? And now you can actually see that it has taken readme.md file. Now once I have linked it, right, what it has taken the latest file from the repository. So this readme.md file gets created whenever you create a repository. It will get created by default, right? Now similarly, you can actually see that that file has come up here as well. Now let me do one thing. Let me just say create a notebook over here. Let's say test notebook. Now I am a developer. I am doing some kind of development. That can be anything. I have created a demo notebook. In that demo notebook, let me just write a normal print statement, right? Let's say print demo notebook. So this is, let's say this is the code that I have, right? Now till now you can see that this code, even let me just refresh it, this code is not present in Azure DevOps till now, right? You have linked it, but it is not present. Why? Because you need to push it, right? You need to push it. Now how do you do that? Let me go back here, click on this test notebook, or in fact what you can do is you can simply click on this part, this project. Let me just do that. Yeah, so you can actually see that once you click on this project, where this folder basically where you are, this is nothing but this is your local environment, and you have copied all the latest code from Azure DevOps. Now if you go here, you click on Git. The moment you click on Git over here, you will actually see this page opening. Right now you can see it also shows you that this particular file has been added. Right, it tells that okay, this particular folder is linked to my Azure DevOps, and you have added one file here which is not present over there. Right, you want to commit it, just commit it means you kind of want to push it. You want to add this particular changed file to the Azure DevOps. Right, add a commit message over here, and this green ones are the changes that you are doing. Just say commit and push. So the moment you do this commit and push, what exactly will happen is you can see that it says successfully committed and pushed changes to the main branch. Right, create a pull request on your Git provider. So if I go back over here and just let me refresh it, you will actually see that this test notebook.py actually came over here. Right, so this is how whenever you do a code and you want to push it to some branch, now this branch can be a feature branch as well. Right, now this is your feature branch, for example. Now from this feature branch, what exactly happens is we create a pull request. Right, we create a pull request, let's say create a new pull request, and what exactly happens, we just select a branch wherever our code is present. Right, right now our code okay, let me do one thing over here. Right, let me go back over here to show you this part as well. So if we go to the repos section over here, in the main, let me just create a new branch. Right, let me say new branch. So this is how you can create a new branch. So now my new branch is created. Now if I go back over here, and if I click on here, and if I click on new here, I can actually click on the new branch. So now it will be linked to my new branch. Right, it is just linked. Right, now my new branch is actually created from my main branch. So whatever changes were already there in the main branch, they came to the new branch. Now let me just add another file for my new branch over here. Let me say create notebook, let's say new branch notebook. Right, let me say that, and let me just simply create it. Now in this particular here, just let me add a print statement. Let's say new, let me say new branch changes. Right, so for example, this is the new branch changes. Now if I go here in this new branch, nothing will come over here. Right, everything is the older version. Now what I do is I go back over here. Right, I go back over here. If I click here, right, then what will happen is you can actually see that it says that okay, you have added this new file which is not present in the new branch. Right, this is actually linked to the new branch. Right, it is linked to the new branch, and you have added a new file over here. Just add a commit message, new commit, and then just simply say commit and push. So the moment you do this, then what will happen is you can actually see that if I go and refresh here in this new branch, you can see this new branch.py file got added. Right, now this can be a feature branch. Right, where a developer is working and developer is allowed to push. Right, where developer is allowed to merge the changes. Now from here, what essentially happens is a pull request is created. Create a pull request. Now this pull request happens like from your working branch to whatever branch, and then it goes through this set of reviewers and everything, and then you simply create it, and the approvers will just check whatever files are added, updated, what are the commits, all these details they will check, and they will approve it or they will complete it. Right, and when you complete it, what will happen is the changes from your new branch will go to the main branch. Right, so developer can create his or her own branch, do the changes in that particular branch, and then push the changes to the main branch after getting all the approvals. Right, and reviewing their code. And always remember that whenever you're trying to complete this pull request, right, whenever you're trying to create this complete this pull request, you have to always delete the new branch after merging. Otherwise what will happen is there will be multiple branches created by developers, and at the end you will see that there are too many branches lying which are unnecessary. Right, and let me just complete the merge. So you can see it says completed, and if I go back to the repos, and I see the merge, and I see the main branch, you can see that even the main branch has this notebook now, right? So this is a process in general that happens. But now you would say that, we are not going to come again and again, and we are not going to create a pull request from this particular UI, right? You will have to do it programmatically, right? This is nothing but your continuous integration, right? Now continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline, which we will be creating now, right? So this is the process, and in the pipeline that we will create, automatically whenever a person merges code to a branch, then automatically even a folder will be created in the let me go back here. Even in the workspace part, a folder will be created over here, right? So this is a part of continuous integration and continuous deployment only. Okay, remember one thing, whenever let me just change it from let me just show you this part as well. I'm just switching back to the main branch, right, because this is just a demo. Now remember that whenever you are trying to push the changes from here, in the first go you might get an error. Now that error will actually be, if you go back to the settings option, you go to the admin console, what will happen is you go to the workspace settings, you will always see that there is something called as repos, right? Now you can put in some restrictions using these options over here. The restrictions can be that you want to push the changes only to a particular URL. Now in that case you have to mention the restrictions over here. Let's say you say that restrict clone, commit and push to the allowed git repository. So whatever allowed git repositories are, just only allow developer to push to that particular repository. Now you can select that option, and then you have to, here in this particular space, you need to define the URL of the repository that you want to commit to. Only those repositories which you mention over here will be allowed. So this thing you need to check. So right now I have disabled, I have no restrictions. I can commit and I can push to any repository. So this thing you need to keep in mind, otherwise this part will give you an error while pushing. So this is something that you need to always take care of. Let me just refresh this part again and go back to the repos here. So right now I am connected to the main repo. Now I hope you understood how does this happen, right? How does the integration part with Azure DevOps happen? Now let me go back to Azure DevOps. Right now what I want is the moment a developer makes changes to the main branch, whenever it goes through feature, whenever he commits to anything to the feature and everything goes through the PR process, everything is approved, and finally any change has come to the main branch, then automatically in my workspace this release folder should get updated with the latest code, right? So right now this release folder has some code. It has some demo notebook 01, it has some code written in 8. But now I want that if any change is done by a developer in the main branch, right, then automatically my release folder should get updated so that I can use the latest code for my deployments, not just deployments, essentially for job scheduling purpose, right? Now for that what we have to do is we have to create a pipeline. Now on the left hand side there's an option of pipelines. Let us click that particular option, and this is how it will look like. Let me just click on this create pipeline, and okay, let me just go back. In the meantime, in case you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I do request all of you to subscribe to my channel and share this video as much as possible, because I think this is the really important one. Let me just click on create pipeline, and if you see that there is an option, right, to choose from the versioning tool. Now you are using Azure repository git, right? You are using Azure repos, this repo you are using. So we'll just click on the first part, and then this is the project that we are using. And then we will be using, now this pipeline is nothing but a piece of code, right, that we are going to write, and this is a very simple language that we are going to use, which is YAML. So we are going to use YAML script. So let me just click on starter pipeline. So we are going to write the pipeline. So YAML is very easier to understand and it is very easier to write as well. So let me just remove everything from here. So YAML is nothing but a kind of a scripting language where everything is described in form of scripts, and it is very easily readable. It is like English. It is like simple English with little bit of syntax. So just to save time, because this video will actually become like really long, so I have already written a script, and let me just paste it here. We will go through it step by step to see how does it happen and how does everything work. Let me just open another instance as well. Okay, so if you see here in your YAML pipeline, the very first thing that I have written over here is the pool. Now this pool is nothing but a virtual machine. Like, you can call it as DevOps virtual machine, where your script will run, right? This script which you are writing, that needs some machine to run, right? And this is nothing but, this pool is nothing but a machine where your script will run. So by default you get Ubuntu latest, you get this machine, you get this Linux machine by default, so you can use that particular machine. Now variables are nothing but a simple set of variables which you are going to use throughout the script. We will come back to it later, right? And then you actually go on and write the steps, right? Now these variables and everything we are going to discuss in detail. Now steps. What exactly steps are involved, right? The very first, now how we are going. So the moment a developer is making any change to the main branch, automatically my folder should get updated, right? Now for that, how do I do this whole work? The very first thing is I need to make sure that whatever code I have in my repository, whatever latest code I have in my repository, I take that particular code, bundle it together, which is nothing but it is called as an artifact, right? So all the code from this particular project, right, and when you bundle it together, it is called as an artifact. So I want to take all the code as an artifact, and then what I want to do is I want to connect to this Databricks instance, and then I want to go to this particular folder. Right now, when I go to this particular folder, what do I want to do? I want to remove everything what is present inside my this release folder, and then recreate everything using the artifacts which I have downloaded. And what is the artifact? Artifact is nothing but the latest code which is actually present in my repository, which has been used by the developer. Right, so this is how it will actually work. Right now, if I go back to the script, this is exactly what the script is doing, right? Publish pipeline artifact. So everything here is defined in form of tasks, right? The first task is publish pipeline artifact, right? So these are the by default variable paths, right, when you write a YAML script inside your virtual machine. Now you want to connect to your Databricks instance as well. So that is why you say pip install Databricks CLI, install my Databricks command line interface on the machine, right? And then I want to, once I have installed it, to log into the Databricks instance, I want, username and password, right? So for that, I need Databricks host and I need Databricks token. Now this Databricks token you will get from settings, user settings. You can see that you can simply click on generate new token, get the token from here, right, and just keep it. I'll show you where to put it and all. So you have your Databricks token, and coming on to the host part. What is your host? This part what I am highlighting on the screen, right? So that is essentially your host name, right? HTTP and the whole URL till your this part .net is your host. Right now this host name you have taken, and you have taken this URL, but if you see here I have mentioned dollar, right? Whenever you mention anything in this dollar symbol, it means that it is a variable. Dollar open bracket and the variable name, this is nothing but a variable. This variable we have kept here, right? And if you see this variable, you would say, Bhavna, we don't see any variable like Databricks host and token. No, it is not there. How we have kept it is, we have kept it in a group. Now if you can see variable group dev. So if I go to this project option, if I go to this pipeline section on the left hand side, and if I say library, right, and if I click on this variable group, you can actually see that I can go ahead and I can create a group, right? That group name is dev. Over here I have mentioned that you can keep any name. So in this dev you can simply add the same variable, what we have mentioned here. So you have said Databricks host, just simply write Databricks host over here. Similarly, you have something called as Databricks token, right? So simply write Databricks token as well here. Now I need to provide the value of my Databricks host, right? Now to get the value of my Databricks host, we just need to copy this part, right? Now the moment I copy this part, you can actually see I go to the pipeline, I can simply paste in here, right? The backslash is not needed. This is my Databricks host, right? Now let me just put in the token as well here and come back. Now you can see that I have generated a test token over here, and I have pasted the test token as well over here. Now if you want, you can simply click on this particular icon, and then your token will be invisible, right? Now if I click on this, then you can see that even my host gets invisible, it gets masked. Now if I click on save, then a variable group is created. Now this variable group has my Databricks host and token, which will be used by this particular script, right, to log into the Databricks CLI. After that, what it does is it is simply using one testing command. It is just trying to test whether it has connected to the CLI or not. Workspace ls, it is simply saying okay, list the whatever is present inside my workspace. After that, whatever artifacts are generated, it is trying to download the artifacts, right, using this download artifacts. After that, what it is trying to do is, if you come over here, right, after checking the artifacts, it is trying to go and it is trying to check whether a folder with this folder name is present or not. Now this folder name is nothing but a variable. If I have mentioned this variable at the top, now if you see, this is my folder name, right? Folder name is nothing but release, right? Release, correct? Now you can add any name. So in case this folder is present, then go ahead, right, and from that folder delete. And then what you do is, delete old release. Essentially, whatever was present in that particular folder earlier was a older version, just delete it. And then what you do is, then whatever artifacts you have generated, just import those artifacts, and in the folder just add that particular new piece of code, just add it, right? So this is what essentially the script is doing. So we will see it, don't worry, we might come back here. I'll tell you step by step what is happening. Now here you have not defined any trigger, like when this script should run, right? So ideally what happens over here is, you kind of define at the top trigger, right? Now you say trigger like whenever there is any change made to the branch, right? You can say the branch name can be main. This kind of customization you can do, so whenever this kind of thing is done, whenever any changes is done to the main, little bit syntax might be here and there. So whenever any change is done to the main branch, then in that case just start this pipeline. But in my case, what I have done is I have not added anything. When you do not add anything, what happens is, for any change, right, it will execute, right? So since it is a demo, I am not I have not created multiple branches and all. So that's why if I remove this option, it is going to run in all the cases. Now I can say save and run, right? Now when I click on save and run, you can actually see that it says commit directly to the main branch. It means that whatever your pipeline you have created, this script, do you want to save it? I would say yes, save it to my main branch itself. So now if I run it, now you can say that it says creating pipeline, running, and now you can actually see that it has started running as well, right? Save and run, this is what we discussed. Now right now it has just started, right? So if you can see over here, 0 artifacts. So I have told you that it creates artifact. It takes the piece of code from the repo, creates a file out of it, which is nothing but artifact, and then deploy that artifact to the Databricks workspace, this place, right? This is what it is going to do, right? Right now we have demo notebook over here, correct? Now let me just refresh it, and at the same time this part is also running, this pipeline is also running. Now you can see that it says running, and you also see it says one published, right? Now if I click on this one published, you can actually see the artifact generated. Now what is this artifact? Again, if I go back to the repos over here, right, this main repo, it contains YAML pipeline, new branch notebook, it contains test notebook, right? So all these you can actually see it over here, right? What exactly is this, right? It is the artifact, it is the latest code that it has taken from the pipeline, right? And then you can see that the job has finished. And if I go back over here to my Databricks, and let me just run refresh it, and if I go back to my workspace release folder, you can see that the two Python notebooks that I created, test notebook and the new branch notebook, right, both got added over here, right? It has taken the files and it has added it in the release pipeline. So this is how it actually works. Also, if I go inside this job, right, you can actually see it has initialized the job, then it has installed Databricks CLI, right? This is what we did, pip install Databricks CLI. So it started the installation of Databricks CLI, you can actually see over here, right? And it also says successfully built Databricks CLI. Similarly, configure Databricks CLI, right? And if you see, we also did a workspace ls in the script, right? So list whatever is there in the workspace, release, users, shared, list everything, then download pipeline artifacts. Now in this case, it is trying to download, you can see the chunks downloaded 4, download complete, then command line, right? And then delete old release, it is trying to delete from the release folder what was present. Then new release, it is trying to add, right? If you can see, it says that it has added test notebook, it has added new branch notebook, right? Now .yaml, they do not have your extension valid, like in the artifact you have .md, you have .yaml file as well, right? So it does not have these extensions, that's why it has skipped, right? And similarly and then you can see that this job has been created and it has been successfully created. So this is how it works. I'll also show you one more thing right now. Now basically in this particular project, what happens is, you have already seen the artifact, right? Let me go back to the pipeline that we ran, right? So if you see this particular pipeline, we go to this pipeline, you can actually see that one artifact was published, and this artifact had these 4 files. Now let's say you say, Bhavna, I don't want to include this .md .yaml file in my artifact. Why do I unnecessarily add these files, right? Now in that case, what you need to do is, in this part itself, right, where you are trying to run your YAML file, what you can do, you can add, let's say, new file, right? You can name that file, you can basically add an artifact ignore file, right? Artifact ignore, right? The moment you add this artifact ignore file, what essentially happens is this file gets created, and what it does is *** /*, you can simply add it. Now what it does is, what does this *** /** mean? It means take everything from this particular how do I say, take everything from this particular from this particular repository, take all the files from this particular repository. And then what do you need to do? You need to, let's say, okay, now here essentially what you can do is, you can actually type in here star.py. essentially it means take all the files from here, and then what do you do? Take all the py files from here, .py files, and then you say this exclamation mark. You means do not take anything else apart from the .py file, and you can simply commit it, right? So essentially this is also one of the way in which you can avoid any extra any extra files that you don't want, right? This is just one way. And remember that why it has started, my pipeline has started because I have made change to the main branch, right? So whenever a developer will make change to the main branch, it has to come from the Databricks, not the direct way that I have done. but it has to come directly from this part, and then you will actually see that this pipeline will automatically run, right? For example, right now it's running, and you can see now again it has published the artifacts. I want to show you the artifact over here, right, especially, and if you can now see that this artifact is just .py file, nothing else. Earlier the artifacts had all the 4 files. So this is the difference, right? This is the difference. Now what I want to do is, now let's say again I go to the repo, just to make things little more clear. I go to the repo, it is linked to the main branch. I just create a notebook. I'm a developer, let's say new development, right? I just create it, right? And then I just add I just normally write anything, new development code, right? Now the moment I do it, I can come back here, right? Let me just check whether my pipeline has finished, the previous pipeline. Okay, it has been finished. Now this is, let's say, new development, right? So this is, what I'm trying to do, I'm going and committing it to the main branch. Let me go to the pipelines over here. Now I ran this pipeline, right? I ran the pipeline 2 times. You already know it. Now the moment I do this change, let me just commit and push. So the moment I do this commit and push to the main branch, automatically all these things will happen, because remember it contain. Okay, now if you see why did this error came, right? Because I have added a git ignore file over there, right? If you remember, I have added git ignore file, right? So I need to pull in the latest changes. Let me just pull it from here. Using this pull option, you have to always pull the latest code from the repository, and then let me just do commit and push, because if you remember, I just added .git ignore, .artifact ignore, sorry, not .git ignore. I added .artifact ignore to show you one feature. Now you can see it has committed and pushed the changes to the main branch. Now if I go to the repos part over here, you can actually see that it has this new development.py code, because it has pushed my changes. Now if I go to the pipeline and if I just refresh it, you can see that this new development pipeline is running. If I go here, it has published the artifacts, and just because we have artifact ignore file, we will only have .py file, and it has added the third py file here. Now if I go back, you can see that the job is complete. And now if I refresh my Databricks over here, you will see that in the workspace release folder, I'll have the new file, new development file, right? I have this new development file. Now from this new development file, you can schedule your code, or you can schedule it to run any time of the day, right? So this is how your CI/CD actually works. Do let me know in the comment section if you have any doubts, and remember, in case you did not understand it in the first go, you can always replay the video and try to listen to it, maybe a little slower. I kind of tried to complete it within the time span of this particular video. I hope you liked it, and do remember to like, share and subscribe.